Hey y'all! So today we're going to be starting chapter 9 in the book, Women Who Run with the Wolves. And I haven't sat with what I've read for very long. So it's still processing in my mind. And I thought about holding off on the video until I had more to offer you. But I actually think that it's good to process together. Because if I'm imposing what I'm pulling from the story onto what I'm sharing with you, then it could possibly hinder whatever lesson you need to pull from it. So I think that kind of sharing it together and then allowing ourselves to process it in our own ways related to our own experiences may actually be better. I do like to give you some insights, but I hope this makes sense, and I hope that that you feel good about that too. If you have different thoughts, I'd love to hear them. You're welcome to put them in the comments. I love to hear all your thoughts. So, chapter 9 is called Homing, Returning to Oneself, which is, a central theme in this whole book. But, I've thought a little bit more about. There's a quote, and I don't remember how it goes. I'll put it in the description. I'll look it up. But it basically says that if you can't put something in very simplistic and direct terms, then you don't really understand it. And so that's really an interesting thought, and I agree with it. I don't think that's wrong. But so what we can do is we can take all of these really complex rich stories that have been passed down through centuries, right, through all the different cultures. We can take these, pull the lessons from them, and just make it bullet point and then share things that way to our children and grandchildren. But I personally think that there's value in sharing the lessons through a story. And I've mentioned this once before, I think, in one of my previous videos, but I think that placing the lessons within a story is more relatable to us, and I think that it sticks more because I feel like it's akin to actually experiencing the lessons in your life. When you're given a story and you have the backdrop of the character and all the experiences that the character is going through in life, like in detail, and you're taking all this in, I feel like it just registers in a certain other area of our mind, just like if we're experiencing things in our own life. And I think that because that when you are learning lessons in real life, right, it sticks with you more so than if you're just sitting in a classroom and you're taking a test. You know what I mean? I was really bad in school about just memorizing things for a test, and as soon as I got the test out and I would do good on that, I would just forget it because I wasn't using it in real life. So there's something of value, there's something to be said about lessons that are learned in real life, and I feel like these stories are in line with that because they are wrapped in similar life situations. So that being said, even though the theme throughout is gaining your instincts again, regaining your instincts again, growing, learning, strengthening who you are, and returning back to your true authentic self, getting away from any kind of capture or bad situations. I mean, that's the theme of the whole book, but I think there are just all these little gems that we can find, tucked away in the different stories that even teach us many lessons and resonate with us in other ways. So I hope that that you're finding value in all this, just like I am. So let's move forward. So chapter 9, Homing, Returning to Oneself. She opens the chapter talking about she says there is human time and there is wild time, and she talks about when she was a child, how children are just so observant and open to experience, and they have not yet had education imposed and layered on top of what they can see with their own eyes. So they're just taking the world in as it is. It's just pure, they're pure, And so she describes that she didn't think that there were only 4 seasons. She talks about, you know, all these different seasons, and she lists them out. And this is just part of her beautiful way of writing. But, and I'm not going to read all of it, but it just talks about, I thought there were dozens, you know, of seasons. The time of nighttime thunderstorm, heat lightning time, bonfire in the woods time, blood on the snow time, the times of ice trees, bowing trees, crying trees, shimmering trees. And then she talks about, you know, pine cones open, pine cones closed, the smell of leaf rot, crackling hair, lank hair, bushy hair, doors loose, doors tight, doors that won't shut at all. You know how your door, you know, with the expansion and contraction of the heat and the cold with the weather, you know, your door is affected a lot of times to your house. So, you know, it's just proof that children live in a moment, in the present, and they're just so observant and taking everything in. And that's their truth. That's their truth. And because, and I think that's why we say children are so pure, because they don't have to work at staying aligned with the truth, because it's just natural. It comes natural to them. What happens is you grow up, and then now you're told what the truth is, right? Truth, in quotes. We're now told and instructed, no, this is the truth. And we're tested on it. We're expected to, you know, to take that in and take it on as all these things as our own, as truths. Instead of, it's like that replaces the childlike approach to life, where you just trust your own eyes and ears. And of course, that's where you get in trouble with liars, because they can just swoop in. It's almost like you're conditioned through the very system that we live in. You're conditioned to accept words over your own senses. And so it just makes you more vulnerable, you know, to be lied to, and to be torn away from what you know to be true, and from trusting yourself through your own observation, right? So just something to think about. But her writing is beautiful here, describing her childhood and all these experiences. So I just encourage you, again, if you don't have the book, to look into purchasing it. It says, the psyches and souls of women also had their own cycles and seasons of doing in solitude, running and staying, being involved and being removed, questing and resting, creating and incubating, being of the world and returning to the soul place. When we are children and young girls, the instinctive nature notices all these phases and cycles. It hovers quite near us, and we are aware and active at various intervals as we see fit. Children are the wildish nature, and without being told to, they prepare for the coming of these times, greeting them, living with them, keeping from those times recuerdos, mementos, for remembering, the crimson leaf in the dictionary, the angel wing necklaces from the silver maples, snowballs in the meat locker, the special stone, bone, stick, or pod, the peculiar shell, the ribbon from the bird burial, a diary of smells from that time, the calm heart, the excited blood, and all the pictures in their minds. Once we lived by these cycles and seasons year after year, and they lived in us. They calmed us, danced us, shook us, reassured us, made us learn creaturely. They were part of our soul skins, a pelt that enveloped us in the wild and natural world. That's important, remember that. At least until we were told that there really were only 4 seasons to a year, and that women themselves really only had 3 seasons: girlhood, adulthood, and old womanhood. And that was supposed to be that. But we cannot allow ourselves to sleepwalk, wrapped in this flimsy and unobservant fabrication. For it causes women, I would say, and men, right, to deviate from their natural and soulful cycles, and therefore to suffer from dryness, tiredness, and homesickness. It is far better for us to return to our own unique and soulful cycles regularly, all of them, any of them. The following story is about the most important of women's cycles, the return to home, the wild home, the soul home. So then she gets ready to introduce the story that we're going to review today. And she says that it originated in areas in the north. It says cold countries to the north. In any country where there is an icy sea or ocean, she says. And of course, there's different names for the story depending on the area it comes from. The seal maiden, or little seal, flesh of seal. But this is her version. She says, I call my analytic and performance version Sealskin, Soulskin. The story tells about where we truly come from, what we are made of, and how we must all on a regular basis use our instincts and find our way back home. So the story we're going to review is called Sealskin, Soulskin, and I'm going to read just a few bits and pieces in the beginning, and then I'm going to summarize the rest for you. So it says, during a time that once was, is now gone forever, and will come back again soon. There is day after day of white sky, white snow, and all the tiny specks in the distance are people or dogs or bear. Here nothing thrives for the asking. The winds blow hard, so the people have come to where their park is. So she talks about, again, those cold regions. And it says, and it was in this land that there lived a man so lonely that over the years tears had carved great chasms into his cheeks. Sometimes, it says he was a hunter. Okay, so he hunted, and he tried to smile, he tried to be happy, he slept well, but he wished for human company. Okay, so it says sometimes out in the shallows in his kayak, when a seal came near, he remembered the old stories about how seals were once human, and the only reminder of that time was their eyes, which were capable of portraying those looks, those wise and wild and loving looks. One night he hunted past dark, but found nothing. As the moon rose in the sky and the ice floes glistened, he came to a great spotted rock in the sea. So on this rock, remember it's nighttime, right? He's out there floating on his kayak, and all he's got is the moonlight. And so he sees something stirring on top of the rock, and he's curious. He's thinking it may be seals, but as he gets closer, he finds that it's a group of women, and they were beautiful. They were, I believe they were singing. It says, he paddled slow and deep to be closer, and there atop the mighty rock danced a small group of women, naked as the first day they lay upon their mothers' bellies. And he was a lonely man with no human friends but in memory, so he stayed and watched. It says the women were like beings made of moon milk, and their skin shimmered with little silver dots like those on the salmon in the springtime. And the women's feet and hands were long and graceful. So it just describes how beautiful they were. And so he was just stunned, and he's just sitting there watching them. They were just beautiful. He couldn't tell if they were laughing or if it's the water lapping at the rock. He was just totally entranced, just taken aback by the beauty of the moment. And so what he did was, he felt this compulsion to just, as he got closer, to hop up on the rock, and because there were some seal skins laying there. So he says almost without thinking, it was just something that was just happened. He just jumped out of his kayak up on the rock and stole one of the seal skins and tucked it into his parka. And so after a little while, they were putting their seal skins back on, and they were one by one slipping into the sea, yelping and crying happily, it says, except for one, because he had stolen her sealskin, right? So she's looking for it, and he says to her, appeals to her to be his wife, and he promises that if she will stay with him for 7 summers, that's the agreement, and then she can have it back. So she reluctantly agrees to this. So she goes back with him, they marry, they have a child, and it says as time went on, her flesh began to dry out, right? And she would tell her son, all these stories of she would look up at the clouds, but in the clouds, the stories she would tell him would be related to the animals that were, the creatures in the sea that she was familiar with. So, and his name, the child's name was Oruk. O-O-R-U-K. I guess I'm saying that right. But in the meantime, like I said, her skin's drying out. It was just flaking. The skin of her eyelids began to peel. The hairs of her head began to drop to the ground. She became pale, and her plumpness began to wither. She tried to conceal her limp each day. Her eyes became more dull. So it's just, she was deteriorating. And so, she finally confronts her husband and says, look, it's time. We're actually on the 8th summer, and you told me after 7 summers you would give me my sealskin back, and he doesn't want to. He says, well, if I give it to you now, you're going to leave us. You're going to leave me and your son, and that, you would be a bad person if you did that. You can't do that. So she essentially has to sneak away, and she does so with her child. So she grabs the sealskin, or does she do that? I don't remember. I think she literally just escapes and grabs her child and runs out to the cliff. And so I'll refresh myself on the story. So essentially, the mother's deteriorating. She's fussing with the husband. The son hears all this, and he's worried about his mother. He knows. And so the child starts to hear this calling from the sea. So he goes to the ocean, and it says that there was an old silver seal that came up to the surface, and he gave the boy this sealskin. So he grabbed it and took it back home to his mom, because he knew his mom needed it. And when she got it, she just pulled it on, and the child was really upset, but she took the child with her. So she ran, and they both dove into the ocean. And he got to meet his grandfather, which was the old silver seal, and he stayed under the ocean. He could breathe fine. Remember, this is a fairy tale, with his mother. And he got a really good, beautiful experience in that short amount of time with his mother and his granddad under the ocean in that part of his family. And but they all knew that the son had to be returned. He was human. He had to be returned back up to the surface to live. And so the mother, it's a beautiful story. The mother just says, I'm always with you, and anytime you miss me, you can, she mentions several of her things that he has, and she says, you can just hold that close and just breathe it in, and you'll be filled with my spirit, and you'll sense that I am right there with you. And so it's a beautiful story, okay? So then she goes into the meaning of all this. It says, loss. So the next section after the story is called Loss of Sense of Soul as Initiation. It says, the seal is one of the most beautiful of all symbols for the wild soul. Like the instinctual nature of women, seals are peculiar creatures who have evolved and adapted over eons. Like the seal woman, actual seals only come onto the land in order to breed and nurse. The mother seal is intensely devoted to her pup for about 2 months, loving, guarding, and feeding it solely from her own body stores. During this time, the 30-pound pup quadruples in weight. Then the mother swims out to sea, and the now viable and grown pup begins an independent life. Among ethnic groups throughout the world, including many in the circumpolar region in West Africa, it is said that humans are not truly animated until the soul gives birth to the spirit, tenders and nurses it, filling it up with strength. Eventually, the soul is believed to retreat to a farther home, while the spirit begins its independent life in the world. The symbol of seal for soul is all the more compelling because there is a docility about seals and accessibility well known to those who live near them. Seals have a sort of dogness about them. They are naturally affectionate. A kind of purity radiates from them, but they can also be very quick to retreat, or retort if threatened. The soul is like that too. It hovers near, it nurses the spirit. It does not run away when it perceives something new or unusual or difficult. But sometimes especially when a seal is not used to humans and just lies about in one of those blissful states that seals seem to enter from time to time. She does not anticipate human ways. Excuse me. She does not anticipate human ways. Like the seal woman in the story, and like the souls of young and or inexperienced women, she is unaware of the intentions of others and potential harm. And that is always when the sealskin is stolen. Yes. I have come to the sense over the years of working with capture and theft of treasure tales, and from analyzing many men and women, that there is in the individuation processes of almost everyone at least a one-time and significant theft. Some people characterize it as a theft of their great opportunity in life. Others define it as a larceny of love, or a robbing of one's spirit, a weakening of the sense of self. Some describe it as a distraction, a break, an interference or interruption of something vital to them, their art, their love, their dream, their hope, their belief in goodness, their development, their honor, their strivings. Most of the time, this major theft creeps up on the person from their blind side. It comes upon women for the same reasons it occurs in this Inuit story, because of naivety, poor insight into the motives of others, inexperience in projecting what might happen in the future, not paying attention to all the clues in the environment, and because fate is always weaving lessons into the weft. People who have been thusly robbed are not bad. They are not wrong. They are not stupid. But they are, in some major way, inexperienced or in a kind of psychic slumber. So it says, one of the central and most potentially destructive issues women face is that they begin various psychological initiation processes without initiators who have completed the processes themselves. They have no seasoned persons who know how to proceed. So like, if our parents just had to feel their way through life and figure it out on their own without them having, wise elders on their side leading them and guiding them, right? And I think that if we look back, a lot of us anyway, if we look back on our family history, we can see that this does ring true. That there's just been such a change in what's standard in our modern culture that we don't have that strong grasp on on valuing what our elders have to say, on passing down these traditional lessons and stories to our young, to give them a good head start on being wise as they navigate their life. And I think, just if you have generation after generation of having to figure it out on their own, there's going to be a lot of mistakes. There's going to be a lot of pain and hurt, and we're not going to know how to avoid traps. We're not even going to know how to identify traps. And so it's really important, and that's why I think that, it can start with you. It can start with any of us to get a grasp as we're trying to figure it out ourselves, to get a grasp on these lessons so that we can start that process in our own families. And, a family doesn't have to be flesh and blood. It can be whoever you feel like the universe sends into your life to mentor. And then that can be passed down through that person's family. So I think that it's just a beautiful thing that we can do for one another, is to share our experiences and the wisdom that, the hard-earned wisdom that we've gained. So it says at the other end of the spectrum is the woman who has experienced theft. So the first part is a woman who was never initiated to begin with, who never got that strong set of instructions and guidance to begin with as she was setting off on her adult life, right? Or a man, same thing for a man. They didn't have any elders to help them along. It says, but at the other end now of the spectrum is a woman who has experienced theft. So maybe somebody got off on the right foot, but they're still inexperienced, and then whatever they did have a grasp on, it was stolen from them. It was taken from them. Just like if you get entangled with a toxic person, right? Who wants you to doubt yourself. They intentionally tear apart that self-trust that you have within yourself. And who is striving for knowledge and mastery of the situation, but who has run out of directions and does not know there is more to practice in order to complete the learning. So it's like incomplete, right? And so repeats the first stage, that of being stolen from, over and over again. Through whatever circumstances, she has gotten tangled in the reins. Essentially, she is without instruction. Instead of discovering the requirements of a healthy, wildish soul, she becomes a casualty of an uncompleted initiation. Because matrilineal lines of initiation, older women teaching younger women certain psychic facts and procedures of the wild feminine have been fragmented and broken for so many women and over so many years. It is a blessing to have the archaeology of the fairy tale to learn from. We can reconstruct all we need to know from those deep templates, or compare our own ideas on women's integral psychological processes to those found in the tales. In this sense, fairy tales and mythos are our initiators. They are the wise ones who teach those who have come after. So it is the incompletely initiated or half-initiated woman or women for whom the dynamics in Sealskin, Soulskin are most valuable. By knowing all the steps to take to complete the cyclical return to home, even a botched initiation can be untangled, reset, and completed properly. Let us see how this story instructs us to proceed. So that's just the introduction of the value of stories like this. And so from here, there's all these different sections. I'm going to read to you the titles of the sections within chapter 9 that we're going to go into in the videos going forward to complete chapter 9. And it's all about pulling lessons on how to, like she says, untangle, reset, and to complete that initiation process properly. So I'm really excited. So the next section is called Losing One's Pelt. And she even references here like Bluebeard, some of the previous tales we've reviewed, because there's a lot of recurring themes and lessons. The Lonely Man, there's a whole section on that. The Spirit Child, Drying Out and Crippling, Hearing the Old Ones Call, the old seal that was in the ocean that her son, the young boy, heard when he ran down there and retrieved her sealskin. Staying over long. Yes. Big section there. Cutting loose, diving in. The medial woman breathing underwater. Surfacing. The practice of intentional solitude. And women's innate ecology. And that completes chapter 9. So I hope that this has been a good introduction to chapter 9 for you all. I hope you're excited to move forward and learn from this story as we pick it apart and look at all the metaphors and all the lessons that are contained there. So thank you guys for coming along again with me today. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you soon.